It is 1:30. We're going to get started. There's quite a few people that still haven't shown up. Let me get this last person here. All right. So I know it's Aiden, I think your name is. If you can hear me, I don't have you on my roll. If you could send me in the chat your full first and last name so I can put it on the roll. I'm guessing they just put you in here. So. Man, there's a lot of people coming in late. So there's another Matt Kelly. So let me get that real quick. No, Aiden, not Hayden. Aiden, A-I-D-E-N. Aiden S, I think. And then there's a Matt Kelly, it looks like. Let me see here. At least he's got his full name there. Matthew Kelly, I'm guessing is probably new. I've got to get this kind of straight. Give me just a second here, folks. I want to make sure I get anybody new lined up. And I think I've got everybody. Print. Okay. So Aiden Cruz. Okay. Thank you. Oh, I do have it. It said Aiden S, so I didn't get it. Okay. Got you. Thank you, Aiden. Hayden. Man, I've got several people with the same first name going on here, so it's confusing me. And not to mention the fact that I get confused easily anyway. All right, so what we're doing today is we're going to cover the jointer in quite a bit of detail, okay? So the reason we're covering the jointer, hold on, got somebody coming in late. The reason we're covering the jointer is because it's one of the first machines you use when milling lumber. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of machines in this shop. Okay, there's a lot. And there's a very specific pattern or way in which we move through the shop with a piece of lumber. And what we have to do is mill or make cuts on a piece of lumber to get it ready for use in a piece of furniture. And what that means is we need 2 flat parallel faces, we need 2 flat parallel edges, and we need 2 flat parallel ends, and everything needs to be square or 90 degrees. Okay, so one of the first machines you'll use is going to be the jointer. So let's take a little closer look at what we're going to try and accomplish on the jointer. Let me zoom this thing out here. Okay, and I'm going to move this over a little bit. Okay, so what we're trying to accomplish, okay, is to create 2 flat faces that are parallel to each other, 2 flat, straight, square edges that are not only flat and parallel to each other, but are also 90 degrees to the faces, okay? 90 degrees to the faces. We're also trying to produce 2 flat, straight, square ends that are parallel to each other and are also 90 degrees to the faces and 90 degrees to the edges. So that's our process. That's what we want to try and do. And there's certain things you need to do first, certain things you need to do second. There's an order in which we do things, and we call that our order of operations. We do faces first, then we do edges, then we do ends, okay? Now the goal, using the jointer first, okay? What we're trying to create with our first step at the jointer is 1 flat face. That's all we want to do. We want to get 1 flat face, okay? Now, that can be a problem. Now, you may get a board that already has a perfectly flat face. It's entirely possible. Pretty rare, but it's possible, okay? But most likely, you're going to see a couple of different problems with a board that need to be corrected on the jointer, okay? And we're only talking about correcting a face right now, all right? So one of the problems we can have on the jointer, and with a board that we're trying to correct, I go the wrong way every time. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so you guys can see it. Okay. So one of the things we're trying to correct, I have it the right way that time, is what's called bow. Okay. What that is a situation where when I set a board on a flat surface, and these are our best flat surfaces, the jointer tables, the table saw, the dado saw, anything that's got a nice machined steel surface, it should be a flat surface in here. What we're trying to correct with bow is this, when it rocks end to end. So if I put all the weight right here on the end of the board, it comes off at the other end. Same thing this way, it comes off at the other end. Another way to look at it is this, okay? This is bow in a board, all right? It can be bowed either way. So what we're looking at on the table is a situation like this. You're gonna see a board that's sitting there like this, right? Or like this, okay? And that's hard to see because my arm's in the way. Or like this, all right? So we can correct that at the jointer, but we can only correct it if we use the right technique in doing so. So one of the things you're going to be asked to do when you finally make it here is you're going to be asked, before you go to the jointer the first time, when you've got your board, you're going to get ready, you're going to start prepping it, getting it milled, getting all the faces flat, getting the edges flat, straight, and square, blah, blah, all that stuff I just talked about. I want you to take a pencil and I want you to mark every single surface on the board. Both faces, both edges, and both ends, all right? I don't know if you can see that. I want pencil marks on every single surface on this board, and here's why. Because before we can use this piece of material in a piece of furniture, every single surface on this board has to be dealt with. We've got to machine, mill, cut, do something to every surface. So that face, both edges, and both ends are going to be machined before it's ready to use in a piece of furniture. And when you first start woodworking, if you have all these surfaces marked, then you'll know when you're done, or you'll know if you're not done, or you know, oh, I forgot a step somewhere, or I forgot to do this, or I forgot to do that, or I did this in the wrong order. This board's going to tell you, okay? So here's how we correct bow, okay? The first thing we want to look at is how we present this board to the machine, okay? How we place this board on the infeed table, all right? So what I want to do is, the easiest way to show this to you is, whenever I have a bow in a board, I've got a choice of placing it on the table, so I can still see, placing on the table like this or like this, okay? This is the way I want to place it on the table, not like this. If I put it on the table like this and feed it through the joiner like this, there's a very good chance that as you're feeding it through the joiner, it's just going to rock like this as it's going through the joiner, and you're not going to remove that bow. If I put it in the joiner like this, with the ends touching, right, and not the middle, okay, it's going to remove a little bit of material from each end, and slowly with each pass, it's going to get closer to the center, it's going to be cleaned up, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that, okay? So we've got a decent bow in this board, right? It's rocking. So that means I want to put this face down. I don't want it to rock when I set it on the infeed table. All right. Now, not along with just how you present a board to the joiner is how you actually run it through the joiner. Okay. Now, on this machine, you will always use push pads. Okay. You cannot run a board through this machine without push pads. All right. It's going to take 2 of them. You only got 2 hands anyway. Okay. But the way you hold these pads and where you put pressure on the board has a huge impact on how well the seam's going to correct a bow. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with all my pressure here at the front of the board, at the leading edge of the board. I'm not going to push down as hard as I possibly can. All I want to do is control the board as it goes over the cutter head, okay? The pad in the rear, I'm not using hardly any pressure at all. The only thing it's doing is assisting in feeding this through the cutter head and helping to maintain control of the board. Now, as with every single machine in our shop, we are feeding material against the rotation of a cutter. So in other words, this cutter is going to rotate this way. It's going to rotate this way, okay? we will always feed our material against the rotation of a cutter or a blade, never with it. I would never feed that way with the rotation. That cutter head can grab the board right on your hands and shoot it out the end. So feeding a piece of material against the rotation of something, against the rotation of a blade, a router bit, something like that, gives us control. We have control over the board. So all my pressure is going to be right here, okay? I'm going to listen to the machine because the sound it makes as the board is passing over the cutter head can tell me if I'm feeding the board too fast, if I'm feeding it too slowly. It'll also tell me what kind of material the cutter head's removing. Is it removing a lot of material? Am I skimming over a place that's just barely touching the cutter head? It'll tell us that. And also those pencil marks will tell us when we're done with this surface. So we're gonna go ahead and start it. All my pressure is right here on my front hand. My back hand, all it's doing is helping maintain control of the board. And it sounded to me and felt to me like that one pass pretty much did it, okay? So I don't have, it's not rocking on it anymore. And if I look at the other side, I've gotten rid of all the pencil marks on that surface, okay? It's a nice clean surface. It's flat, ready to go, okay? So the next machine you would go to when working on this board, okay, would be the planer, okay? And the planer is a machine that when you feed a board into it, the cutter head is above your board, not below it like on this machine. So since we've already dealt with that surface with the joiner, when we go to the planer, that jointed surface will be placed down on the bed of the planer. That planer is going to remove material from the upper surface of this. It's going to make this board consistently thick. In other words, no matter where I measure the thickness, it's going to be the same. It's going to create two perfectly parallel faces, okay? So that would be the next step for this board. Now, we have other problems with boards too, but I'm just going to show you the two most basic problems. The next problem we have with a lot of material is what's called twist, okay? And that's when it can rock side to side like this. So in other words, if I take my finger, put it on this corner, on the opposite corner up here, it rocks. You guys should be able to see that thing rocking like crazy. You might even be able to see the twist in this board. It's pretty bad, okay? And when I use this little stick, for an example, twist is basically, and I'm sorry I'm not looking at the camera, but I have to look at how you guys are seeing it. Twist is basically this, right? When the board's twisted along its length, all right? That's why it's called twist, I guess. Good enough reason. So this presents a little more interesting problem, okay? This one, I don't have to worry so much about which surface I put up or down. It's not really going to matter too much, but this thing's got quite a bit of twist. So I'm guessing it's going to take a couple passes to get it out of there. Once again, we're going to have pencil marks on both sides. Actually, we would have it over every surface. So I'm just going to do it over both sides right now. I'm going to do this side here. So I'm going to mark it up pretty good so we can see it. This is fun anyway, right? This is probably how most of us draw. Okay, so that's the surface that's going to be down, okay? Now, so we've talked about how we present this board to the joiner. Doesn't matter which surface we have down, but we picked one. The hardest part about correcting twist in a board is how you feed it through the joiner and where you put pressure with the pads, okay? So what I want to do is, since I got a pretty good idea this is going to take more than one pass through the joiner to get that surface flat, what I don't want to do is on one pass have a pad here, on another pass have a pad here. I want to be consistent in where I place my pressure every time I feed it through the machine, okay? And that goes with both pads. I don't know if you guys can see or not, but it's raised up off the bed right here. So if the first time I put one pad there and then put my rear pad back here, look what I'm doing. I'm fighting the twist in this, okay? But if I put both pads along the same edge and I keep pressure on that same edge every time I put it through, it should help fix this twist. Let's give it a shot and see if it does any good. Okay. A lot of sawdust out of this thing. I don't have the dust collection system on. It'd be too loud. You wouldn't be able to hear anything. So I've got some sweeping to do when this is all done. All right, so I'm going to put a pad here. And I'm also not putting a whole lot of pressure on it. I'm not trying to push down as hard as I can. I don't want to force the twist out of it with hand pressure. I want to cut the twist out of it with the cutter head. So you can kind of see where we got, okay? I've got a little bit right here at this end still in pencil marks, and then it goes just like this. This hasn't been touched. This whole area right here, it just gets wider and wider as it goes up to the end of the board, okay? So we're going to run it through again. I've got a little bit down here too. We'll run it through it again and see if we can get rid of it completely. It might just take this second time and we'll be good. We'll see. My pads are going to go to the same place they did before. That to me sounded like it got it pretty good. Yep, the whole face is clean, okay? The other thing we want to make sure of before we walk away is that we can set that face down on there and there's no twist, all right? So it's not bouncing around anywhere, it's not moving, it's nice and flat. A lot of times when you do this, if you pull this up and just let it drop, you can kind of hear the air getting pushed out from it. It means we got a nice flat surface. So there's our nice flat clean surface. And just like the other board, we would then go to the planer, jointed face down in the planer, we'd run the planer, removing material from the upper surface of the board or the upper face of the board, okay? So that's how to correct bow and twist with the joiner. It's one of the first things you'll do, okay? So once you've done that and you've taken your boards over to the planer and you've gotten them down to their final thickness and you've gotten the two parallel faces, okay? One of the benefits of that, treating both faces before we treat an edge is, well, I don't want to get too deep into it for you guys. You're going to have enough on your plate as it is. But all that really does, it does one nice thing for us for various reasons. Let's say this board had been jointed like we just did, but we'd already planed the opposite face. That means that it doesn't matter which face we put against the fence when we come back to the joiner to do an edge. Okay, we can put either face against the fence. It won't matter. Okay? So once we leave the planer, we've got two nice flat parallel faces. The board's a consistent thickness. No matter where we measure it, it's going to be the same thickness. So now what we need to do, the next step, we're going to come back to the joiner and we need to treat one edge. All right. So let me set this board up. Here, oh, I got it over here. I'm going to set this board up for an edge joint. And all I'm really going to do is create a defect along one edge with the bandsaw.
Oh my God. I'm not going out.
Yeah. All right, so all I've done is create a defect along one edge and show it to you. Somebody asked something? I thought I heard a voice. So basically all I've done is taken and cut a chunk out of one edge from like about here to here. Okay, so another situation, we would have two clean faces. There wouldn't be any pencil marks on either one of these faces because we've already jointed a face and planed the other face. But now what we'd have is we'd have both edges would be marked up from previously, right? This would have pencil lines, this has pencil lines, this has pencil lines. So the next step in prepping a board for use is to joint one edge, okay? So we did faces first, edges second, And the last thing we'll end up doing is ends. That's our order of operations: faces, then edges, then ends. Okay. Now, so this is the edge I want to join. I don't know if you can see it. There's a huge gap right here. It's touching at the ends, not in the middle. And the same thing goes for joining an edge. I do not want to present this thing to the joiner like this. Okay, I want to present it to the jointer like this. Okay, I want to put it on there so it's sitting on there like this, not like this. Just like doing a face, we're taking a chance of this thing just rocking as it goes through and not fixing any edge issues, I guess you'd call it. Issues of the edge, okay? So when you're joining an edge, it's not as easy when you do a face, but when you're joining an edge, you can really hear when that process is done, when the edge is nice, perfectly flat, straight, and square. The jointer tells you when it's done, okay? And I want you guys to listen to this when we go through. I think we did this yesterday, but it's good to see it again. Okay, so I've got a flat face against the fence. My fence itself is 90 degrees to the table. This doesn't do any good joining the edge of the board if that fence isn't 90 degrees to the table. All it's going to do is put a jacked up edge on it. We don't want that, okay? So the fence is 90 degrees. I've got a push pad here. I've got the ends touching, not the center. And I'm going to listen to the machine as I feed it, okay? Guys, should have been able to hear that. We make contact at the leading edge and at the trailing edge. We still have pencil marks in about this area right here. So as we make another pass, this will get smaller. Maybe finish it on the second pass, maybe not. There may be a third one necessary. So we're gonna go ahead and do it. Yep, I can hear it. It's gonna need a third one. We've got about this much left. Okay, before it was like from here to here. Now I've just got this much. One more should do it. Sounded like it, it felt like it too. Okay, that's it. Nice, clean, flat, straight, square edge. So what we've done by flattening a face, planing the other face, and then joining an edge, now we've created our very first two 90-degree angles. This edge is 90 degrees to this face, and the edge is 90 degrees to that face. Remember, we have 12 different 90-degree angles we have to create on this board. We just created our first two, okay? The machine you go to after this would be the table saw. We're gonna worry about that another day. That's gonna be quite the conversation, the table saw. But there's a few other things I wanna talk to you about the joiner, okay? Number one, the main purpose of the joiner, the main purpose of the joiner is to flatten the face of a board and to flatten, straighten, and square the edge of a board, okay? That's the main purpose. It can do other things. It can make rabbets, it can make bevels, it can do other things. But what we use it for in here pretty much exclusively, because we have other machines we can do those other processes with, we exclusively use it for flattening the face of a board and flattening, straightening, and squaring the edge of a board, okay? The next thing I want to talk to you about on the joiner, okay, and these are all test questions and safety test questions and quiz test questions and things like that, okay? We only run solid stock on this material, softwoods and hardwoods. We do not put sheet goods through this material. And let me tell you why. One of the particular things about sheet goods is we can pretty safely assume both faces are flat. And they're also parallel to each other. So we don't have to join a face. It's already flat. That's one of the functions of the joiner. We don't need it on sheet goods. I'm talking particle board, plywood, veneers, melamine, MDF, whatever, sheet goods, manufactured material. So we don't have to joint the face. It's already flat. We can also safely assume that the edges are already flat, straight, and square, which is the second purpose of the joiner. Okay, so we do not need to joint the edges of sheet goods. Okay, so no sheet goods on the planer. Okay, solid stock only. Next, this red guard right here. Okay, you will never, you can never, you may never, you are not allowed to ever move it out of the way, prop it out of the way, disable it, disarm it, damage it in any way, shape, or form when you're putting a board through here. That guard must be in place. That also goes for any other machine in this shop that has a guard on it. A lot of machines have guards on them. The table saw, the band saws, the panel saw, the panel router, the miter saw, they all have guards on them. You are not allowed to move, alter, disable, or otherwise damage a guard on any machine in this shop. If you're ever caught disabling or moving a guard out of the way when you do a process on a machine, you're gone. You're out of here. You'll never step foot in this shop again. It is an absolute no-no. Okay, that's one of my pet peeves, is keeping the guards in place. Okay, you will always use push pads on the joiner. Okay, when you're face jointing, when the board's face down on the table, you have to have two. You cannot have a bare hand on the board when you're joining a face. When you're joining an edge, oftentimes the board's fairly large. What I usually do is I'll have a pad here. These have angled handles, so the angles be up, not down. And I'll just put a finger here at the back corner, and that allows me to just add a little bit of pressure, pushing it through, okay? I don't have a problem whatsoever if you use two pads on this. That's perfectly fine, okay? But you will use at least one when you're edge jointing, all right? Another rule on the joiner: your material must be at least 12 inches long, all right? Here's 12 right here where my fingertip is, okay? It's got to be at least 12 inches long. Anything shorter than that, it's too short for the joiner. For example, where'd my little example go? That is too short for the joiner. Cannot joint that, okay? This thing is only about 7 inches long, a little under 7 inches long, too short. The second problem with this board right here, okay? On this board, where's my stick? The grain on this board is running in this direction, not this direction, okay? So that makes this surface and this surface end grain, okay? That's another rule. We do not joint end grain, okay? There's a couple reasons for it. Number one, it's pretty rare that you have a board that's at least 12 inches wide, okay, that would meet that 12-inch rule. We need 12 inches of contact on the fence and the table, okay? That's not 12 inches of contact on the fence and the table, all right? The second problem with jointing end grain is it can tear out when it exits, for a good candidate, when it exits the cutter head. Let's try this one and see if it'll do it. Okay, I'm going to try jointing end grain. Not bad, but usually when end grain exits a cutter head like this, it's going to take a chunk. It's going to splinter where the board exits. You can see a few little pieces splintering off there. I've seen it just take the entire corner off before. So we don't joint end grain, okay? So the basic rules here: the main purpose of the joiner, to flatten a face, okay, to flatten one face, and to flatten, straighten, and square the edge of the board. The second one is the joiner can only be used with solid stock, right? Hardwoods and softwoods, pine, poplar, alder, oak, stuff like that. That's the only thing you can do for it. You cannot use it for sheet goods, okay? You cannot move the guard out of the way or disable it in any way. It must always be in place. Your board must be at least 12 inches long, 12-inch contact, cable and fins, okay? And you never want to joint end grain, okay? So that's the basics of the jointer. Pretty straightforward machine, fairly easy to use, a little bit of patience and practice with it, and you'll be a pro with it in no time, okay? So here's what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna take us to the Canvas page here. And if I can get this out of the way. If you come to Wednesday, all right, go down here. First of all, let's look at Wednesday. There's a copy of the major tool identification sheet, okay? If you click on that and open it, and scroll down a little way, you'll notice there's a picture of the jointer. Everything you need to know to pass the quiz is in this text along with the jointer. And I just went over everything you need to know to pass the quiz. Okay, so everything you need is there if you get in trouble. If you go back to modules and you scroll down to the jointer quiz, clickety click, here's where you'll take the jointer quiz, all right? So what I want you to do is go ahead and take the quiz. When you're done taking the quiz, all I need you to do is come back, type your name into the chat so I can take attendance, all right? And once you've done that, once you've taken the quiz and typed your name into the chat, if one end is humped out a little, how do we make it inward? I'm not sure I understand the question, Connor. If it's humped out a little bit. You know, that's a hard question to answer because I'm not exactly sure what you're picturing when you ask that question. If we were here, you could show me, but I don't really know exactly how long is these guys, these are about 6 inches, I think. Looking at some of the questions. Yeah, these are 6 inches long. Okay. Let's see if there's any more here. Unmute. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure. Let me see here what else next. So if one of the edges is humped out a little, how would we make it inward on the edge? So we can't do it. It has to be humped in. Get to that text. You mean the quiz? All right, I'll show you. Connor, I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to tell me. I mean, what we're doing is flattening a face, flattening both faces using the jointer, and then flattening an edge. So there shouldn't be any protrusions or humps, as you call them, okay? So, okay, when you show up here, I'll help you with it. We'll get it figured out. So here's how you get to the quiz, all right? All right, so basically you should have your classes here on your main page, okay, whichever class, manufacturing 1. And then when you go to modules, okay, that's basically the pages. That's each week as we go. And this is week 1, that's what we're in right now. The current week we're in will always be at the top. And then where it says Wednesday, jointer quiz right here. And if you need help, if you need to look at that packet to answer a question, just click on Wednesday and it's right here, okay? But you can always go back to the quiz right here and take the jointer quiz. Once you've taken the quiz, type your name into the chat window and you're welcome to take off. We'll be done for the day, okay? Thank you very much, guys. It's Wednesday, it's hump day. We're on the way downhill to the weekend. Take care of yourselves and I will see you all tomorrow, all right? I'll stick around here until 2:15 if you have any questions, okay?